Whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare unto him? Have you not known? Have you not heard? Hath it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. To whom then will you liken me? Or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Why sayest thou, O Jacob, and speakest, O Israel, my way is hid from the Lord, and my judgment is passed over from my God? Hast thou not known? Hast thou not heard? That the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Look unto me, and be saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God, and there is none else. To whom then will you liken me? This is the message written in nature, which the day of promise, the Sabbath is appointed to keep in memory. Exodus 20 verse 8 says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And the world has deliberately forgotten. They have no interest in remembering. They have spiritual amnesia. How about you? 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. Leviticus 23:3. Is the Sabbath still binding? Of course it is. But we hear all kinds of arguments and excuses as to why the Sabbath is no longer binding on Christians, don't we? You've heard them. They tell you that Jesus abolished the Sabbath, right? Or that Jesus himself, he actually broke it, right? Or that the Sabbath was, well, the Sabbath is important, but it's only for the Jews. Or that Paul, here's a good one, or that Paul or the apostles replaced the seventh day with Sunday in honor of the resurrection. You hear these, right? We hear all sorts. But let's explore these ideas to see if we can try to dig the Sabbath out of its misunderstood pit. Did Jesus change the Sabbath or to Sunday, or did he abolish the Sabbath? The answer is no, he didn't either. I invite you to turn to Matthew chapter 5. We want to read verses 17 through 19. Matthew 5. Matthew 5. Give you a moment. Verses 17 through 19. Jesus is speaking here. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Did Jesus change the Sabbath or abolish it? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, he says, I don't even want to think about it. Don't even let her enter your mind. Think not that I've come to do this. Some claim that Jesus broke the Sabbath, broke the law, broke the Sabbath specifically. How about John 15:10? Let's turn there. John 15:10. And Jesus here speaking again. If you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Jesus says, I've kept my Father's commandments, and yet man says he broke them. One of them is wrong. I'll leave it up to you to determine who that is. Oh, the Sabbath was only for the Jews. How about that one? You've heard that one before, right? I invite you to turn to Mark chapter 2. Mark chapter 2, verses 27 and 28. Jesus once again speaking. Don't you like it when Jesus speaks? He should do it more often. Jesus speaking here. And he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. Now, if Christ made all things, and you will find this in John 1, Colossians 1, Hebrews 1, and Ephesians 3, verse 9, if the Bible is very clear, especially in the New Testament, that Jesus made everything, then he, by fact, then made the Sabbath. Okay, I was wondering about that. I was wondering. Then it stands to reason the one who made it knows the purpose that it was made for. And for who it was made for. He said it was made for man, not for the Jew. He had an opportunity to say that, didn't he? Did he know them? He was one of them. And by the way, are we not Jews? If you are Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heir according to the promise. Are you not? He would know the meaning and purpose of the Sabbath. God has given man 6 days for labor, but he has reserved the seventh to himself and has pronounced a blessing upon those who keep it holy. Have you been blessed? Amen. Yes, you have. Yes, you have. The Sabbath was not for Israel merely, but for the world. It had been made known to man in Eden, and like the other precepts of the Decalogue, it is of imperishable obligation. Imperishable obligation, what does that mean? I'll let you think about that. Of that law of which the fourth commandment forms a part, Christ declares, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from it. So as long as the heavens and the earth endure, are they enduring so far? You're on them, right? The Sabbath will continue as a sign of the Creator's power. And when Eden shall bloom on the earth again, are you looking forward to that? When Eden shall bloom on earth again, God's holy rest day will be honored by all beneath the sun. From one Sabbath to another, the inhabitants of the glorified new earth shall go up to worship before me, saith the Lord. This is Matthew 5:18 and Isaiah 66:23. After all, isn't it a day of promise? Does God keep his promises? Amen. Then we will keep his day. Then what about this? What about Paul? Paul probably did. Probably Paul changed the Sabbath. He was a New Testament Christian, and he certainly, with the apostles, right? You've heard that one, right? All right. Let's turn to 1 Corinthians 16, verses 1 and 2. I want to take a look at what Paul says here. 1 Corinthians 16, verses 1 and 2. This is Paul. Paul says here, now concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given order to the churches of Galatia, even so do you. Upon the first day of the week, there you go. On the first day of the week, there it is. It's holy now. Upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store, as God hath prospered him, that there shall be no gatherings when I come. Does he speak here of anything about keeping a Sabbath or changing a Sabbath to the first day? It's not there, right? So what are some interesting things about this text? Number one, Paul wrote 14 books in the New Testament. 14, right? He wrote most of the New Testament. This is the only time he ever mentions the first day of the week. Some of you are like, huh? If there was to be that monumental change, don't you think Paul would write more about it? And what else is missing? There's no instruction. And to me, I think probably the greater evidence is there's no controversy. There was controversy about circumcision. Can you imagine what the controversy would be on changing one of God's precepts amongst the Jews? They would have had to pick up some good stones. There's no instruction. no teaching, and no controversy. We can't charge Paul with changing the Sabbath. I'm sorry. You'll have to go somewhere else. I've even heard that Jesus, this one's a good one, that Jesus is now my Sabbath rest. I don't have to keep the Sabbath. No, Jesus is my Sabbath. You ever heard that one? Yeah. Oh, I have. Doesn't Jesus say that? Matthew 11:28? 11:28. He says, come unto me and I'll give you rest. Does he say I'll be your Sabbath? No. Is Jesus a day or a redeemer? He's a redeemer. He's not a period in time. And by the way, let's turn to Matthew 24:20. 24:20. Jesus speaking again. Will we let him? Well, let's begin with verse 17. Let him which is in the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. If the Sabbath had been changed, why was Christ so concerned about the Sabbath in the future? Tell me. Then you have to take a moment. You then have to tell me about the Jesus who changed the day, and then all of a sudden is still concerned about the day he just changed. Christ said he made the Sabbath. He did not abolish it, nailing it to the cross. The Sabbath was not rendered null and void by his death. 40 years after his crucifixion, it was still to be held sacred. For 40 years, the disciples were to pray that their flight might not be on the Sabbath day. This is Desire of Ages, page 630. For 40 years, they were praying for the same thing. How long have you been praying for something? 40 years. And you've heard this one too. You've heard people say, Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That's the one commandment I keep. And then the other one too, you should love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the two commandments. I don't keep the 10. I just keep these two. Right? You've heard him say that, right? So what is our work? The Sabbath question is one that will demand great care and wisdom in its presentation. Much of the grace and power of God will be needed to cast down the idol that has been erected in the shape of a false Sabbath. Right? Lift up the standard. Lift it up higher and still higher. Point the people to the 20th chapter of Exodus. Perhaps we need a quarter on the book of Exodus. Since we're doing one on Deuteronomy, maybe we should do one on Exodus. Point the people to the 20th chapter of Exodus, in which the law of God is recorded. The first 4 commandments outline our duty to our Maker. Now, I want you to catch what she says next. This is Testimonies Volume 9. She says this: he who is false to his God cannot be true to his neighbor. And you've seen that. He who is false to his God cannot be true to his neighbor. And of course, there will always be the argument, strange that it is, that by resting on the seventh day, we are somehow seeking to work our way to heaven. You guys are legalists. You've heard that one, right? But Jesus says, John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. And why is love, and we talked about in Sabbath school, right? We talked about love. Why is love important? Yeah, we had our children's story, right, Shannon? What was it about fire? How many of you are afraid of fire? Okay, 2 of you. All right, I am. Okay, I'm afraid of fire. If a car is in flames, you know what I want to do? I want to go the other way. But if I hear a baby crying in the car, how many of you are no longer afraid of the fire? See what I mean? So Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments. He says, I want to give you something that's going to be the motivator to get you beyond anything that you're experiencing now. That's going to overcome all persecution, all torment, and all fear. You need love. If you love me, keep my commandments. Some of you have heard of J. Vernon McGee. You ever heard of him? He used to have his own radio show. He was one of the radio pastors. J. Vernon McGee tells this story about a man who wanted to argue about the Sabbath. The man said, "I'll give you $100 if you'll show me where the Sabbath day has been changed." McGee answered, "I don't think it has been changed. Saturday is Saturday. It is the seventh day of the week, and it is the Sabbath day. I realize our calendar has been adjusted and can be off a few days, but we won't even consider that point. The seventh day is still Saturday. And the Sabbath is still the Sabbath day." He got a gleam in his eye and said, "Then why don't you keep the Sabbath day if it hasn't been changed?" McGee answered, "The day hasn't changed, but I've been changed. I've been given a new nature, and I'm joined to Christ. I am part of the new creation. We celebrate the first day of the week. That is the day that he rose from the grave. That's what it means that the ordinance had been nailed to the cross," Colossians 2:14. You know, you've heard that the Sabbath was just a shadow, right? And in Colossians, I'll just turn there for the sake of the discussion. Colossians Chapter 2. Give you a moment to find it. Colossians. It's the fourth of those go eat popcorn. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, go eat popcorn. Colossians 2:14 through 17, blotting out the handwriting of ordinance which was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross. And having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them all. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or of a new moon or of a Sabbath day, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. So there it is. The Sabbath was just a shadow. It was against us. It was contrary to you. And yet Jesus said the Sabbath was made for man. What does the word "for" mean? What does it mean when Jesus said it was made for man? It meant it was made for your benefit. It was made for your blessing. There's no way Paul could say it was against you. Now you put Paul and Christ against each other. That's not what Paul is meaning here, by the way. There's more to it. Or how about this? We don't worship the Sabbath anymore. Now we keep the Lord's Day. Huh? How does that work? Revelation 1:10, obviously. Revelation 1:10, here's John. "I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet." That's the day I keep. I don't keep Sabbath anymore. I just keep the Lord's day. I want to invite you to John chapter 20, verse 1. John chapter 20, verse 1. "On the first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away by this." This is the gospel writer who also wrote Revelation. Why does he in the book of Revelation refer to the Lord's Day, and then on the first day of the week in the book of John, he only calls it the first day? He used two very different names because these are two very different days. He never calls the first day of the week the Lord's Day. So when he calls the first day of the week in John, and then he calls about the Sabbath day or the Lord's Day in Revelation, it's two very different days. Same author. So it couldn't have been John. It's not the apostles, it's not Jesus, it's not John. Then who did it? I want to know who did it. Don't you? When will the day of God, when will God's moral law loses its force? Let's find out. This is in Signs of the Times. It was in January of 1882. The law of God was not given to the Jews alone. It is a worldwide and perpetual obligation. He that offends in one point is guilty of all. Its 10 precepts are like a chain of 10 links. If one link is broken, the chain becomes what? Worthless. Not a single precept can be revoked or changed to save the transgressor. While families and nations exist, while property, life, and character must be guarded, while good and evil are antagonistic, and blessing or a curse must follow, the acts of men, so long must the divine law control us. And she actually outlines here when this law will lose its force, and you'll have to tell me when this is. When God no longer requires men to love him supremely, to reverence his name, and to keep holy the Sabbath, when he permits them to disregard the rights of their fellow men, to hate and injure one another, then, and not until then, will the moral law lose its force. So the answer is never. God is never going to ask you to do that. He's never going to ask you to hate. He's never going to ask you to torment and abuse other people. He's never going to tell you not to reverence his name. So what's the answer? Never. It's a day of promise, is it not? How far back do we go? The Sabbath institution, which originated in Eden, is as old as the world itself. How old is the Sabbath? As old as the world. How long has this world been here? I'll have to take your measuring tape, right? How long has it been here? It was observed by all the patriarchs, and from creation down during the bondage of Egypt, the Israelites were forced by their taskmaster to violate the Sabbath. To a great extent, they lost the knowledge of its sacredness. When the law was proclaimed at Sinai, the very first words of the fourth commandment were, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, showing that the Sabbath was not then instituted. We are pointed back for its origin to creation. The Sabbath points back to creation, its origin. In order to obliterate God from the minds of men, Satan aimed to tear down this great memorial. He says, that's what I got to do. So it's not necessarily today. I don't know that Satan really has that much of hatred over a period of time. I don't think he cares about which period of time it is, but it's what's associated with that period of time. He says, I really don't care for the Creator, so let me get rid of that which points to him. Does that make sense? The Sabbath, that was Counsels to the Church, page 27. This is Desire of Ages, 281. The Sabbath was hallowed at creation, as ordained for man. It had its origin when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Job 38:7. Peace brooded over the world, for the earth was in harmony with heaven. What a day that must have been. Protestants now urge that the resurrection of Christ on Sunday made it the Christian Sabbath, but Scripture evidence is lacking. We went over some of that this morning. Not much honor was given to the day by Christ or his apostles. The observance of Sunday as a Christian institution had its origin in that mystery of lawlessness, which even in Paul's day had begun its work. Where and when did the Lord adopt this child of the papacy? What valid reason can be given for a change concerning which Scriptures are silent? And do you know who is these? It's funny because the Protestants now urge that the resurrection of Christ on Sunday made it the Christian Sabbath. Do you happen to know who the strongest voice is against this teaching or this belief? It's kind of surprising to me, but Rome. If you don't have this book, you want to get it. The ABC. This is put out by the Roman Catholic Church. Our attention has been called to the above subject in the past week by the receipt of the brochure of 21 pages by the International Religious Liberty. They go on to say that the Adventists are the only body of Christians with the Bible as their teacher who can find no warrants in its pages for the change of the day from the 7th to the 1st, hence their appellation Seventh-day Adventists. Their cardinal principle consists in setting apart Saturday for the exclusive work of worship, exclusive worship of God, in conformity to the positive command of God himself. Per contra, the Protestants of the world, the Adventists an exception, use the same Bible as their cherished sole infallible teacher by their practice since their appearance of the 16th century, do not honor that day. And this is printed by a cardinal. This is what the Roman Catholic Church teaches. And they go on to say, if you want to be a Bible believer, you want to follow the Bible, you should be a Seventh-day Adventist. I like what the Catholic Church teaches on this. I really do. That's just me. Let me tell you something else. Let's go to Exodus 20, verse 8. Exodus 20, verse 8. And then we're going to read verse It says here, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Look at verse 10. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy maidservant, nor thy manservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. In a world that is reeling with racism and segregation and separation, the world needs a Sabbath more than ever. Because the Sabbath is a day of unity. And it's a day of equality. You want equality? You want unity? You want inclusion? Then don't. You better accept the Sabbath. God says this is the day that we're all included. Rich, young, old, black, white, Hispanic, non. Sorry? You want inclusion? You want unity? Then honor my Sabbath. I want you to turn to Numbers 15. We're going to look at verses 32 to 36. Numbers 15. And here's a problem that I have personally when it comes to Sabbath versus Sunday. I don't particularly like your God. A God who changes from Saturday to Sunday, I do not like. It's not so much the day. To me, it doesn't matter. I used to be a Sunday keeper, and I'm a Sabbath keeper. It doesn't matter. It's just a period of time. It doesn't matter to me. But I don't like your God. And I want you to know why I don't like your God. And it's in Numbers 15, beginning with verse 32. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. And they that found him gathered sticks and brought him unto Moses and Aaron and unto all the congregation. So what is happening here? Here's a man, he's doing what? Any of you ever gathered sticks on the Sabbath day? Or you thought about it and you thought twice, right? You're like, oh, wait a minute. And they put him in a ward because it was not declared what should be done to him. Did they know what to do with him? No, they didn't know. They found this man, he's gathering sticks. They didn't know what to do with him, so they put him in consignment. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall be surely put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died as the Lord commanded. That's what I don't like. I don't like your God. I don't like a God who is so strict in the Old Testament. He executes a man for gathering stones, and then comes the New Testament and says, I was just kidding. I changed my mind. I was just joking. I don't like that God. I don't like a God who you can't trust. I don't like a God who's arbitrary, who's unpredictable, and isn't fair. It's not a day. But your God who changes from Saturday to Sunday, I do not like. I'm okay with the day. You want to keep Sunday? I'm okay with that. You want to keep Saturday? I'm okay with that. But it's the God I don't like. Does that make sense? The state of the dead, was that last night? Eternally burning hell? I don't like that God either. Because if the righteous go to heaven immediately and the wicked go to hell immediately, right? Isn't this the prevailing thing? This is the God you have to embrace. As far as we know, Cain only murdered how many people? One. He's been suffering in this burning hell for 6,000 years. And then we have a guy whose name was Hitler, probably responsible for millions, who's been there maybe 70 years. I don't like your God. Your God will torment a man for killing one for thousands and thousands and thousands a year, and here's a guy that's maybe killed millions, he's only been there 7 years. I don't like your God. You understand what happens when you understand what happens when you embrace a false theology. You then have to embrace the God behind it. You got that? There's also this teaching that We talked about Christ, who's the I am. Is that what you mentioned earlier? The I am? The self-existent. There's this thinking in Adventism in some circles where Christ was created some time ago and sacrificed. I don't like that God. I don't like a God that creates another being to sacrifice and doesn't sacrifice himself. You got that? So this is just a principle. I just don't like your God. When your God changes things. So just be aware. When you're asked to believe a doctrine, look at the God behind them. Look at the God behind them. Oh, your doctrine, I'm not so sure about your doctrine, but I don't like your God. I'd rather have the God of the Bible. I'll just keep him. How many of you want to keep the God of the Bible? Amen. Amen. We have heard from James 2:10. I want you to read that. James chapter 2, verse 10. James says here, for whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is what? Guilty of all. Which one do you like breaking? I tell people, I say, well, some churches believe in 9 commandments. Some believe in 8. Some believe in 10. I think you're better off in the church that believes in 10. Don't go for the 20% discount or the 10% discount. Get the whole thing. Because James is right? You break one, if you break one, you're guilty of. So let me ask you something, class. Is there perhaps a reverse blessing? You ever thought about that? A reverse blessing. And it works like this. The day of promise has a reverse blessing, if you please. From the pillar, this is in Church Councils to the Church, 261. From the pillar of cloud, Christ declared concerning the Sabbath, verily my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generation, that you may know that I am the Lord that does sanctify you. Exodus 31:13. The Sabbath given to the world as a sign of God as the Creator is also the sign of Him as Sanctifier. The Sabbath, the power that created all things, is the power that recreates the soul in His own likeness. And I like this next thought. To those who keep holy the Sabbath day, it is a sign of sanctification. True sanctification is in harmony with God, oneness with Him in character. It is received through obedience to those principles that are the transcript of His character. And the Sabbath is a sign of obedience. He who from the heart obeys the 4th commandment will obey the whole law. It's a reverse blessing. You're having trouble with being honest? You're having trouble with taking things that don't belong to you? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You keep the 4th, you'll keep the 10th. I like it this way. I put it this way. If you keep the Sabbath will keep you. And how will it be? How will it be in the end? Now, this one's a little tricky. How will you and I respond in the end when we're told or enforced to keep Sunday holy? We live in a world where words such as impose and mandate, you ever heard of those? I hear them at least, I hear them every day. It's a day of the word. It's a day of the, impose and mandate. Have you noticed that it has become fashionable to be hostile and defiant? How dare you impose? Hey, honey, don't forget the trash. Oh, you're mandating to me take out the trash. It's becoming fashionable to be hostile and defiant, right? The insurrection in Washington, it's happening in my own home. What will be our attitude when we are asked to keep Sunday holy? Well, but George, that's a common work day. I'm going to have a hard time with that, by the way. I make more money on Sunday than any other day of the week. This is going to hurt my pocketbook. So what are we going to do? No, I like that. Out of the mouth of babes. I was listening to, you guys have heard of John Bradshaw. He's doing a lot of these presentations. He did one just very recently on 3ABN, and he talked about a new breed of Seventh-day Adventists that he's scared of. And this whole corona thing has brought them out on both sides. There's not a compliant bone in my body. There's not a submissive fiber in this. It is only by the grace of Christ that I do anything good. I just asked my wife, if we go somewhere and a sign says no trespassing, she goes, oh no. That's where I want to go. What's back there? She goes, oh, keep going. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I got to sit down for this one. Testimonies Volume 9, page 232. Dear brother, I think she's writing to me. Dear George, I will try to answer your question as to what you should do in the case Sunday laws are being enforced. But it's a mandate. They're going to impose. What am I going to do? The light given me by the Lord at a time when we were expecting such a crisis as you seem to be approaching was that when the people were moved by a power from beneath to enforce Sunday observance, Seventh-day Adventists were to show their wisdom by refraining from their ordinary work on that day and devoting it to ministry effort. That's a new thought. To defy the Sunday laws will but strengthen in their persecution the religious zealots who are seeking to enforce them. But I have rights. I have a right. Give them no occasion to call you a lawbreaker. Have you ever heard this before? If they are left to reign upon men who fear neither God nor man, the reigning will soon lose its novelty to them, and they will see that it is not consistent nor convenient for them to be so strict in regard to the observance of Sunday. Keep them right with your missionary work, with your Bibles in your hands, and the enemy will see that he has worsted his case. One does not receive the mark of the beast because he shows that he realizes the wisdom of keeping the peace by refraining from the work that gives offense. But I'm going to be there. I'm going to go on YouTube. I'm going to go on Twitter. I'm going to go on Facebook. All chainsaws unite. It'll be at 6 o'clock Sunday morning. Who's going to join me? Bad move for George. Bad move. Sunday is a child of the papacy. This is page 235. Sunday is a child of the papacy exalted by the Christian world above the sacred day of God's rest. In no case are God's people to pay it homage. But I wish them to understand. That they are not doing God's will by braving opposition when he wishes them to avoid it. What are we doing now as a people that is setting us up to be defiant at the end when God does not want you to be defiant? He wants you to be submissive. What's that word this morning? Humility, humble. That has not brought that out in us. And this is what John Bradshaw says, I'm afraid for our people. I'll put the chair back. Right now, you and I have 6 days in which to do what the rest of the world is doing in 7. Am I right? The world doesn't care what a Sabbath is. They don't keep any of it. They don't care. So you have 6 where the rest of the world has 7. When these laws are passed, you will then have 5 where the rest has 6. Does that make sense? You will do in 5 what you are doing now in 6. And you see this in Daniel chapter 3, where the image is set up. You'll have no offense by keeping Sunday holy in the minds of man. That's Daniel chapter 3. We won't have a problem with Daniel chapter 3. We're going to have a problem in Daniel chapter 6, where we are told we can't pray to our God for 30 days, where you can't keep Sabbath. You have to work Sabbath. That's the challenge. It isn't Sunday. Sunday won't be our challenge. What will you and I do when they would, well, yes, you got to keep Sunday holy, but there's 6 days in which to do labor. You're Seventh-day Adventist, you're going to have to start working Saturday. Do you see the rub? That's going to be the challenge. At the present, Sunday keeping is not the test. The time will come when men will not only forbid Sunday work, but they will try to force men to labor on Sabbath and to subscribe to Sunday observance or forfeit their freedom in their lives. But the time for this has not yet come, for the truth must be presented more fully before the people as a witness. That's Maranatha, page 177. And let me tell you this. This has been the history with some of the Jews. The Jews had set in their hearts to keep the Sabbath day holy, right? And guess who joined them? Guess who joined them? Satan. He said, oh, you want to keep that day holy? Oh, let me do it for you. We are going to keep that day holy. Man. Notice these guidelines taken from the Jewish Mishnah. The main classes of work are save 40 but 1. Sowing, plowing, reaping, binding sheaves, threshing, winnowing, cleansing crops, grinding, shifting, kneading, baking, shearing wool, washing or beating or dyeing, snipping, weaving, making two loops, weaving 2 threads, separating 2 threads, tying a knot, loosing a knot, sewing 2 stitches. If a button fell off the pastor's suit on Sabbath on his way to church, how would he do that, right? Tearing or ordering 2 stitches, hunting a gazelle. Oh, now some of you are in trouble. You're going to have to put away your gazelle hunting. Slaughtering or flaying or salting it or curing it, scraping it or cutting it. Writing 2 letters. You can do 1, but not 2. Erasing in order to write. Well, you can erase one of the letters, but not the other one. Building, pulling, putting. Let me see. A fire, lighting a fire, striking with a hammer, taking from one domain to another. These are the main classes of work. Whew, I was just tired reading it. What if you were rushing home on Friday evening and you didn't quite make it home and your donkey was still heavy loaded? There's a rule for that too, by the way. If on the eve of the Sabbath darkness overtakes a man while he's on his way home, he must give his purse to a Gentile. While it is yet today, of course, you have to do it while it's still day, not Sabbath yet. Give it to the Gentile. So the Gentile is going to be, since he's not going to, it says here, since the Gentile isn't going to be saved anyway, so let him carry the things for you. And if there's no Gentile with him, he must put on his ass, on the donkey. When he has reached the outermost courtyard of the town, he may take off from his donkey such baggage as was taken off on Sabbath. For what cannot be taken off on Sabbath, he must loosen the cords. So what you can do is just loosen the cords and they just fall naturally. And they weren't allowed to put a fire out on Sabbath. But if there's a Gentile, if a Gentile came to put out a fire, they may not say to him, put it out. Do not put it out, since they are not answerable for keeping Sabbath. Here's another one. What if you were bathing yourself and you're trying to dry yourself off on Sabbath? If a man bathed in the water of a cave or in the water of Tiberias and dried himself off, even though it was with 10 towels, he may not bring them away in his hand. 10 towels. Here's the reason. The footnote on this is here's the reasoning. You would need 10 towels just so you don't offend wringing one of them out and you're working, wringing out the water. So get another towel. But I'm still wet. Get another towel. I'm still wet. Get another towel. Up to 10. Satan says, you want to keep the Sabbath holy? I will keep it holy. You understand what happened? He made it so binding. He made it so binding. The Jews had so perverted the law that it made it a yoke of bondage. Their meaningless requirements had become a byword among the other nations, especially was the Sabbath hedged in by all manner of senseless restrictions. It was not to them a delight, the holy of the Lord, and honorable. The scribes and Pharisees had made its observance an intolerable burden. A Jew was not allowed to kindle a fire, not even to light a candle on Sabbath. As a consequence, the people were dependent upon the Gentiles for the many services which their rules forbade them to do themselves. They did not reflect that if these acts were sinful, those who they employed to perform them were also guilty as they would be. That's Desire of Ages, page 204. And then furthermore, what the Jews had started, paganism completed. The spirit of concession to paganism opened the way for still further disregard of heaven's authority. Satan worked through unconsecrated leaders of the church, tampering with the fourth commandment, also an essay to set aside the ancient Sabbath, the day which God had blessed and sanctified, and in its stead to exalt the festival observed by the heathen as the venerable day of the sun. This change was not at first attempted openly. In the first centuries, the true Sabbath had been kept by all Christians. But then she goes on to say the Sabbath then became a day of sadness and gloom. Wow. But it's still a day of promise, is it not? It is a day of promise. It is also a day of ownership. In Isaiah 58:13, our text, the Sabbath is God's time. It's not ours. Right? If you borrow somebody's car and they give you the key and they say, well, make sure you wash it and fill it up with premium, do they have a right to say that? Of course they do. It's their car. Does God have a right to say how he wants his day to be treated? Of course he does. It's his day. I want us to go to two more texts as we finish this. The Sabbath is God's time, not ours. When we transgress upon it, we are stealing from God. God has given us the whole of 6 days in which to do our work and has reserved only one to himself. This should be a day of blessing to us, a day when we should lay aside all our secular matters and center our thoughts upon God and heaven. And one final thought. I want to share this with you. I want us to go to Romans 8:15. And one of the thoughts is that the Sabbath is also a day of relationship. Is it not? Let me put it to you this way. The experience I'm having with you right here, right now, I don't have any other day of the week. You don't either. As a matter of fact, many of you only see each other on this day. The rest of the day, the rest of the week, I'm with these professional heathens. They're really good, but they're professional. And it's not until I come here on Sabbath that I have this time with you, my church family. This is not duplicated at any other time. Am I right? It's a day of relationship. It's a day of relationship with one another, and it's a day of relationship with your God. Right? So I want you to take a look at Romans 8:15. And then we're going to look at, finally, at Galatians 4, verse 6. But Romans 8:15. For you have not received the spirit of bondage, again, to fear. And there's this idea of bondage that if you're keeping the Sabbath, you're keeping the law, you're living a life of bondage. That's a lie. That's a lie, right? It's a law of liberty. It's a law of liberty. For you have not received the spirit of bondage, again, to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we do what? We cry, Abba, Father, right? And then one more, Galatians 4, verse 6. Galatians chapter 4, verse 6. And because you are sons, does God treat you as family? We are what? The sons and daughters of God, are we not? Galatians 4, 6. And because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son unto your hearts, crying what? Again, Abba, Father. The relationship that God has with you on this particular day is unique to this day. It is not duplicated on Monday. It is not duplicated on Wednesday. It's not on Friday. And it's not on Sunday. It's not on Tuesday. And the heart of God's day is the heart of your God, your Abba, your Father. It's a day of promise. It's a day of eternity. Aren't you happy for that day? It's a day of blessing. And many of you want to strive to keep that day holy. You keep it holy. You keep the Sabbath will keep you. Oh, as a footnote, here is a chart of all modern and ancient languages whose identity of the Sabbath has never changed. If you want to come and be bored, come and see me.
Please stand and sing hymn number 383, O Day of Rest and Gladness. Hymn number 383.
Will get you there. We'll help you get there. Amen. Let us pray. Father, we thank you again for your gift to us. We thank you for this great Sabbath day that we've had together. And we ask that your continued blessing on these sacred Sabbath hours. Draw our hearts and minds heavenward is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen.